I compromise, also trying in another way through the parliament to make amendment of the 2008 constitution. So we are going forward for the inclusiveness of women and children and the ethnic minorities. One unique characteristic of Myanmar is we have established ethnic affairs union ministry. At the same time, every state and region government have a minister for the ethnic affairs. Every ethnic nationals who have the ethnic population of equal or greater than 7% will have their own minister in their region or state government. So in this way, we are trying to tackle with the ethnic affairs, and we are trying to reconcile between the past, the mistrust between our brothers. Recently, we also adopt a national youth policy, which will be the guidelines for the state, regional, as well as the union governments to abide by. So we are going forward for the inclusiveness of Myanmar. But to be frank, Myanmar was recently known in the international community as a notorious information about our activities in the northern Rakhine, and many are suspicious of our government's democratic and federal intentions. They said there were human rights violations seriously. As my colleague has explained, it's a long past history, and the international media was overwhelmed by the so-called Rangers propaganda. We Rakhine ethnics have to suffer very much for those who have came from Bangladesh, and now they have linked the repatriation of the Bengalis with the recognition as the ethnic Rohingyas. We are ready to accept them if they can prove that they had stayed in Myanmar. In 1993 agreement between Myanmar and Bangladesh government, it was clearly said that if a person can prove that he was in Myanmar, he, his family, his parents, his siblings, his offspring, even his foster sons and daughters will be accepted. But this citizenship and recognition as an ethnic national is another thing. It's concerned with the sovereignty of Myanmar. So you should see these two things separately. If they combine these things as one, we cannot accept them. Because you know, Myanmar is so I have to end my speech because I'm speaking too much. And thank you for your attention, and I will ready to explain. And I also apologize because I'm an occasional speaker in English. Although I'm a well-resourceful and well-versed in Myanmar politics, I'm ready to answer any question. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mayo. Thank you so much. And at least we've learned from the Myanmar experience and the difficulties you have down there. Same, actually, you began by saying you share your story with Kenya. And at the end of it, I actually agree that you share a lot of challenges with Kenya, especially the part of implementation. But that's why we're here to learn. I'd want Honorable Ogindo to go first to ask a question or two. But before then, I've seen several legislators come in the House. I've seen Richard Onyonka, he's here. I've seen Zipporah, she's here also. But I'd like to recognize the presence of a party leader, because it's about parties, Honorable Moses Wetangula, Senator. If you'd like to participate in this session also, you're welcome to say one thing or two. But Senator Wetangula will be speaking at the other forum where we'll be talking about alternative voice and agenda in political governance. He will be leading that session at the amphitheater right after this session. So if you really want to say something, we'll allow you. But let's speak to Honorable Oginda. He's also a party leader. Talk to us. And this is a session now that, Chair, I didn't see him. Okay, so you will speak, but this is a session where we'll try to interact as much as we can. Go to mentimeter.com. There's a code there, 8697779. Post your comment so that you see them if you have a comment about the session. But if you have a question, we'll try to get as much as we can. So, Honorable Ginde, go first, then I'll give Chair a chance.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, forgive my voice, for it is as a result of pollution that I have a congested voice. And it is for that very reason that I founded a political party called Green Congress of Kenya, whose foundation is to ensure a clean environment. Thank you very much, presenters, for your presentations, and I want to pick up from where Madam Martha Karua left. Yesterday we were here and the presentation was made, and we appreciated that you cannot get democracy if the population is not empowered. And I think it is incumbent on us as Kenyans to ensure that our population is empowered. Secondly, about this inclusivity, you cannot legislate it and get it right. Until and unless you take it as a value, that is when you will realize it. And that is why us in Green Congress Party of Kenya, we have taken it as a value and we embrace it. That is why our party structure has 50% men, 50% women. The leadership of the party is one co-party leader man, one co-party leader woman. So we are practicing it and we are embracing it. And it takes courage to embrace that. The last thing I want to say is it takes courage to actualize these things that we are looking for. And that is what Kenyans need. I've seen my brother here, Ouedraogo. I'd had the privilege of going to Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, and this is the one country where people took courage to ban their entire parliament just because they didn't agree with what they were doing. So what we need is courage to do what we are doing. Last, and I want to call upon the attention of party leader Martha Karua, and also the attention of party leader Onweta, and party leader Omingo Wamagara, and I know there are many party leaders here. The best way from where we stand now to achieve this inclusivity is to come together with all the like-minded and pitch for proportional representation that I heard Martha Karua talk about. And we can only do that if we bring the like-minded in the political arena, in the civil society, in the clergy, and what have you, and create a caucus that will pitch this, a loud voice that every Kenyan in every corner will appreciate. We will have youth in the decision-making table. We will have women in the decision-making table. The onus is on us, and let's make that part of a resolution of this CMD festival. I thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for your comments. And I'm just coming to you. There'll be a roving mic. You can ask the questions. But I'm wondering, Honorable Wetangula, if you have something to say, or we can proceed just for 2 minutes. Yes, just for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Happy International Women's Day. As you've been told, Senator Moses Wetangula, Senator for Bungoma County, leader of the second oldest party in Kenya, Ford Kenya, as a party which the chair of CMD cut his political teeth through. I have come with two members of my party, Honorable Richard Momoi Maonyonka, the second deputy party leader of our party, and Mama Nazra Ibrahim, nominated member of parliament and the national treasurer of our party. Since I'm going to another session, I'll just say 2-3 things. This morning when I woke up, being International Women's Day, I sent 2 tweets which I want to read. The first one, I said, I joined the women folk in celebrating the International Women's Day. Governments and persons in authority need not be reminded that women's rights are human rights and that equality between men and women is not anybody's option. Her mom, wife, sis, and daughters. My second tweet was, my mother, and this is factual, my mother brewed busa and distilled changa to see us through school. Having stopped her school at standard 2, she dutifully checked our report cards to see what position we got and promptly punished poor performance. At 90, she remains the icon of my life. Happy Women's Day. As we celebrate Women's Day, we as a party, Ford Kenya, have in every rank and file embraced equality between men and women. Our party has a NEC of 62, out of which 31 are women and 31 are men. We had only one slot to nominate a member to the National Assembly. We gave that slot to a woman and not a man. Last parliament, we had one slot to nominate a senator. We nominated a woman. And the county where I come from, Bungoma, is the #1 county in Kenya in the election of women. We are the only county that nearly hit the 1/3 requirement. Out of 45 wards of Bungoma County, 13 wards have elected women MCS. Through the courtesy, effort, and campaign and support of yours truly. So I stand for equality. I stand for equity among people. And I stand for the opportunities being available to all, and we must level the playing field. If we don't level the playing field, talking about equality is just academic. We have a new constitution, as I finish, with very, very progressive provisions and ideas. But the process of implementation has posed a challenge. Yesterday, my party presented a party position to the BBI, and we strongly recommended that if we want to achieve equality between men and women in this country and all other groups, we must embrace proportional representation. That is the only way, and my party presented a very strong document which we'll post on the web to share with all other interested groups so that we can be able to achieve. Lastly, before I go to my other session, I want to encourage CMD that in dealing with political parties, let it not be an annual event, because political parties engage in activities on a day-to-day basis. We have a lot of youth cadre in political parties. We have a lot of women cadre in political parties. And in the last parliament, incidentally, my party was given a slot to nominate an old person. And we nominated a 78-year-old patriarch who served his full 5 years. So as we promote the youth, don't forget that the transient process of people aging, like my dear sister here, must also be accommodated because they carry a rich history of our society that you must all tap from. May God bless you.
Thank you, Senator, very much. Honorable Zipporah Kitonyi, if you remember in her other life, for the longest she was the chairperson of the Maendeleo ya Wanawake. I think because it's International Women's Day, we have to allow her to say a minute or two. As you come up, I'd like to remind you there's a survey that is out from the International Labour Organization, ILO, and the statistics are disturbing. Out of the global workforce, less than half are women, right? Yeah, paid labor, global, half are women. Mheshimiwa. Just briefly, then we will take your questions now.
Good afternoon, all of you. Happy Women's Day. I would like to echo the CMD and the donor community who have supported this event. And I want to support Senator Wetangula by saying that it should not be an annual event. It should be a continuous process because to be able to accommodate the women in our political parties should be a key and a number one option. I want to congratulate the party that says they have 50-50 in their neck. That is the Ford Kenya party. And I think all of us, all the other parties should echo and follow that suit. I want to say that we have come a long way. The women journey looking for equality has been a very, very long journey, and it is still long, and it is still windy. But it is the commitment of the political parties to make it straight and shorter so that women can get what they deserve, what is their rightful positions in the parties. The political parties is another life that it's like the life that we have in our homes. So we need to accommodate each other, and women should be accommodated in the political parties so that we can be able to work together. When I woke up this morning also, I remember that the journey that we've taken to fight for women to be in equal position with men has been a very long one. And still, even, I don't want to open the debate. You know what happened the other day. We are still fighting for the 2/3 gender in our parliament. It has not gone through. So I want sincerity from our men. Even if Honorable Wetangula speaks here about this good party, when it comes to other things, we do not get the support that it is supposed to be given when it comes to voting in the House. And therefore, if you really want us to appreciate and see that you are genuine and sincere, then let us pass the 2/3 gender in our parliament. And so I come from the oldest party, the party that founded. Unfortunately, I'm not wearing red. I don't know whether my girls are in the room. We have our nominated Senator Pshiru from KANU party. We say KANU is Mama na Papa. So for me, I love my party. I love women. They are my passion. And all of you who are here, mostly, you are KANU. Asanteni.
Asante sana. They may be leaving, but I'd like to bring back the House into the discussion we're having. There's a roving mic. If you just have a comment, just share it. We'll be reading it, and the rest of us can read it there. But if you have a question, I will move to you right now. Who has a question? Where do we go first? There's a lady. Just very brief question so that we are able to take as much as we can, and if you can direct it to someone.
God is good all the time. Martha Mara is my name, from ANC party. Martha Karua, people think I'm, when I say my name, Mara, they think it's Karua. Okay, now my first question is this. Do we really mean what we want in terms of inclusivity? In the sense that, when we talk about inclusivity, we fight for the space, for the women, for the youth. You get the space. When we get that space, what do we do with the space? Are we going there to represent our sisters, our brothers born of the same womb, our sons and our daughters? We give you the space. You get in, you're our icon. You go in, you represent, you go in to elect, nominate, or you go in to appoint your people from the same family. Are you really being just to this issue of inclusivity?
Okay.
Again, on inclusivity, it is so wide. It's not just about the gender. It's not just about the women and the youth. Political parties, we are being excluded from being funded by the Registrar of Political Parties. That is in our constitution. Inclusivity should be it should be broadened to every space. We go to the county levels. The county levels, we are given 30%. I come from Kajiado. Others stay in places that they are not born. Are these people who are of other tribes in these other counties really taking their space to be included in those county levels? Those are the very many questions that we are really asking ourselves.
Yes.
And we want our legislation at the county level and the national government to streamline this so that you can have a well-balanced inclusivity.
I think that was more of a comment than even a question,
yes,
right?
Another one also goes to the bridging initiative. Inclusivity should be all-based, everywhere. Is it just about ODM and Jubilee in the bridging, in the BBI? Or is it about all political parties being included in it?
Thank you, Martha. There's a gentleman right behind you there. Make it very brief to accommodate the rest of the
Actually, it's
people.
very brief.
Yes.
My name is Anthony Davids, and Martha has given us a very good, actually, I can call it a call to action. But for my question will be, what are they doing to unite our voices? Because every day, the youth are disorganized, we are unstructured. I would want for her and Musalia to tell us, what are they doing to unite us as voices so that we can have a single youth voice? Thank you.
Okay, that was a question that was directed to Honorable Karua, who is leaving, I guess. So, what are you doing to unite the youth? I think just briefly as you leave.
Everything that we can, and I've just said that when the youth break the barriers of party, ethnicity, and all that, we, the senior citizens, will be there to guide you. And personally, I'm ready, able, and willing. Over to you.
Great answer, and I agree with her. You can call her anytime she picks calls. I'm looking. There's a gentleman here also. There's a gentleman here. Make sure you tell us who you are asking the question, if it's a question or a brief comment.
Thank you very much, Ken. My name is Bernard Wakoli. I'm the National Youth Leader of Ford Kenya, as you can see. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And my question goes to Madam Caro. You talked about inclusivity. And I tend to believe that Kenya, in practice, is a republican, because we talk of Republic of Kenya. But in theory, we keep on talking about democracy. And there's a thin line between democracy and a republic, because in a republic, the authority of the majority is constrained by a constitution or laws. But in a democracy, there's limited constraint of the majority who imposes their laws or imposes their authority to the minority. So my question is, how would we, as a country, embrace republic as a practice and not really keep on talking about democracy which has not, which most of us even don't understand how it's practiced. Second question, I had two questions. Second question to the panelists who were here before. There's this debate about having inclusive or having inclusive, the winner takes all thing, that we need to change the constitution so that the winner does not take all. And yet in a democracy, we know there is competition, people are competing. And whoever wins in that competition, of course, forms a government or wins and takes it the way he wants. Can you kindly, or whoever, clarify to us about how we can address this issue of winner takes it all, especially in a polarized country like Kenya? Thank you.
Thank you, Wakoli. And Caroline, that was a direct question to you, and I guess Senator Halake will answer the question on what do we do about winner takes it all. So I'll come to you, but there's a lady, let's combine this question. There's a lady right here.
Hello, my name is Serene from FIDA. My question goes to Zipporah Kitoni and Honorable Shiro. Concerning the women movement, what are women who are currently in politics doing to mentor young women? Is there a platform to do that?
Thank you. You have two questions, Mheshimiwa. There is a lady right at the back. Let's take one more, then they can answer.
My name is Karen Mtoniwasa. I work for a youth-led youth-serving organization in Kenya. I have 3 questions.
Please.
I'll direct them specifically to specific people. The first one is for Honorable Magara or Dr. Thomas. I am a political student, I'm a political science student at undergrad level, and one of the books that we were made to read was Machiavelli, who talked about democracy being the best form of governance in the world. And the definition that we were given of politics, and that keeps on being given, is politics is who gets what, where, and how, which for me I think is a definition that does not do justice to politics as a leadership and service space. So my question is, how can democracy in pluralist societies like Kenya and many other in Africa, has it failed or has it not failed? That's the question. Does it work for Africa? Does it not work for Africa? And if not, or if it works for Africa, how then can we, how would it look like? How would democracy in Africa look like? That's for Dr. Thomas and Honorable Magara. The second question is for Ms. Caroline. How do we actualize inclusion in a man-eat-man society? I think we have heard that Kenya is a man-eat-man society, is a self-centered, individualistic society. So how do we actualize inclusion? I work with kids as young as 10 years old, and I'm supposed to start teaching them about inclusion. And when they leave school or leave the mentorship sessions we give them, they go to a space whereby they are faced with a man-eat-man mentality. The third question is for Senator Shiro. Thank you so much for speaking on affirmative action. I think there are very few people who think about affirmative action in the way that you do. And case in point, the new Kenya Youth Development Policy that is actually a draft right now, their driving force is affirmative action for youth mainstreaming. So my question to you is, does affirmative action help with inclusion in a sustainable manner, or does it take away the responsibility to actually build the capacity, to strengthen the capacity to actually go for it? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think those are many questions that they need to answer. I see you right there. I see a gentleman right here, and I see a gentleman. I'll give them an opportunity to respond to those questions. Honorable Martha left, so she's not able to answer, but Kara is still here and Abshiro is still here. They can answer that.
Thank you so much, Ben, for that question. I've known Ben way back. We have served a lot in Fort Kenya. So now, my question was on the issue of republic versus democracy. Well, my take of it is that in a Republican setup, we see a deliberate attempt to restrain the majority rule at the core minimum of what is protected. In the democracy sense of it, we are saying majority carries the day, irrespective. Putting it in the context of our country, I think Kenya, as much as largely we call ourselves a democracy, there's a sense in which also we have incorporated and domiciled Republican tendencies. For example, take the case of a Bill of Rights chapter in the Constitution. It has deliberately said there's the minimum which cannot be derogated, irrespective of the circumstances, say the right against torture. So in my view of it is that we have deliberately as a country tried to say that there's, as much as we are a democracy, there's this minimum we are protecting. So probably the question is this minimum sufficient enough? And as someone was rightly asking, has democracy worked for Africa? I think for me the question is, have we tinkered and tailored it and customized it to suit our circumstances? When I heard about, when Thomas was speaking from Burkina Faso, it reminded me of the story of Thomas Sankara. And if you read the story of Thomas, you see that he was very deliberate in engaging the community. For example, when he immediately took power, he formed what they were calling the CDR, the Committee in Defense of Revolution. And these committees were across the country, and it is well documented that what they were able to do was much more and higher than what government of the day did. And the point is, how much do you mobilize the community to get engaged in the day-to-day activities of a people? It's possible it can work. Many a time, sometimes, empowering community is construed as a challenge to the power that is. Contrary to it, as Thomas showed it to us, he was the president, worked with these committees, and there were, I remember in one of the committees, the target was to build 30 schools, and they were ending up building 70 schools in a year. Power of community engagement. So for me, even tying that with the issue of inclusivity, I would say we must go back and engage at community level. Because democracy presupposes a lot of things. One of those it presupposes is an empowered population. A population that can see through between the lines. You know, not the usual rhetorics that we hear from politicians whenever elections are near and due. So we must go back and engage the community for real inclusivity. And I want to agree that moving forward in terms of political space, given that this is a forum of CMD Kenya, we must then talk political space. For me, I agree. We must go the electoral, the proportional representation way. That, for me, is the only way to break this. How many times have we had this gender bill being defeated in the House? We've tried one way for far too long. Let's be creative and try another route. I think it can work. For me, proportional representation is the real deal. Even if, again, we need to go back and tinker with it and mix it and see how best it can work for us as a country. So I'd be saying that even as we engage in this referendum engagement, CMD Kenya, I'd be urging, can we push the agenda of proportional representation? At minimum, it guarantees the women, the youth on the table of decision making. And that we must do. Thank you.
Senator has questions.
Actually, I've forgotten some of the ones, but let me start with the last one about affirmative action. Affirmative action is good because, again, even I'm standing here because of affirmative action. But it can and sometimes does have an undesired consequence where people might think, what have you done? You've not stopped this bill from happening and things like that. But what I have a problem with is when we talk about youth programs, women programs, affirmative action here, you know, they seem so tokenism for the largest population. How is it that you do some projects for 70% of the people? Isn't that supposed to be the thing we do always? Isn't that supposed to be in fact, the only thing we do? I mean, how is it that you're doing some little things here and there for the entire population? Isn't the entire population entitled to mainstream? And this is the questions we need to ask. Instead of being very happy that some things have been thrown to women and to youth, is to ask, aren't we the most? Therefore, in fact, these projects and programs should in fact just be about youth and then the rest, because in terms of equitable representation or equitable sharing of resource or equitability, you know, this is what I need us to think about, because I find it difficult to have a few projects here and there for youth empowerment, and yet it's the entire country that is youth. How? So these are the kinds of things this is what I was trying to allude to when I was talking about, you know, affirmative action that just doesn't seem, is a bit warped. Now, I don't have answers, clearly, but it's a journey. I know the question of my little sister here said, what are we doing? Probably not enough, because we're also quite handicapped, as you can imagine. But yes, we are legislating to make sure that legislative space, and just to say, government resources follow government policies and legislation. Outside of that, then we don't really, people will tell you we have no system or channel of people to do ABCD. So we're legislating to make sure that, first of all, the legal frameworks, the policy frameworks are in place and are favorable and are gender-based. Be they government budgeting, we literally put on a gender lens and look through the budget policy statements to see, but where is the amount going to women and what have you? That is the aspect of legislation from where we sit to, as legislators, we are trying to do to make sure that every government policy is gender sensitive and takes care of the majority, both in terms of the youth and the women. But in terms of the capacity building programmatically, legislators, and this is one thing that we must understand, we are not capacity builders. We are legislators. And sometimes we don't even have the money for it. But we're making sure that if there's capacity building legislation, that's there. If there's resources that should go to capacity building, we make sure it's there, especially in Senate where we do the CARA and the DORA, which is basically the revenue allocation and revenue distribution to counties. We look and we actually go to a different room and say, what does it say about women and what have you, and for these kinds of things. But with regards to direct interventions programmatically, it's an area that perhaps is not best suited for us, and that's where the partnerships come in with civil society, with the media, with everybody else that can actually do the actual capacity building. But yes, in Senate, we don't really have development finances, but we're looking at a bit of money for capacity building of MCAs, so that then they can legislate and they can oversight budgets and they can make sure that government policies and government legislation and government resources are gender sensitive, and that we have a stake in the pie. Somebody else asked a question, I forget what the question was, but if there's anything else, I'm around for a few, an hour or so, please feel free to get in touch. But that said, let's not give up. There's a lot that can be achieved if the right people get involved in politics. Let's not shy away from it. And it's not easy, of course, but it can be done, and it has been done by those before us. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. And Honorable Onyonka wants to say something?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much. I would like to speak from the point of view that I'm now a member of Parliament who has been in that house for the last 20 years. It's quite interesting. My realization, Ken, is that when you look at the way we are handling our issues of governance, and I'll go back to the gender bill, I noticed three things. Number one, the caliber and quality of the legislature that you people are electing. 3/4 of the people who are in that house actually never even went to school. So when you're presenting a matter that is about gender issues, about our governance and management of public affairs, the standards are quite low. And we've discussed this with our colleagues. But people deserve the leaders they get. All right, I mean, right now, look at the quality of legislator who's going to run for office. He must have big cars, he must have money which is most probably stolen. He may not have any ideological basis or engagement. He didn't have to go to school anyway, and especially after the emasculation of Chapter 6. That's what I've realized. Number two, when you come to the house itself, And you've seen this, and I wished that Mrs. Kitoni was here, because I grew up seeing her fighting for women. When you look at what was happening in the House, and the lady legislature would have to forgive me, because I was going to say this even when they're here. They didn't even attend the voting. 29 of them never showed up. They were out in Europe touring, same conferences, same seminars. So that tells you that even the impetus and the feeling that your leaders themselves, not necessarily because they're women, but because they would understand what it is to be discriminated against as a woman, they didn't attend the voting. Point number 3, what has been the best case scenario? I fortunately happen to have done some work in Rwanda. The decision by Kagame to make sure that he's going to increase the number of women who are going to be in the legislature, in parliament, and all the county government sectors was deliberate. There was a very systematic, deliberate attempt or decision by the Rwandese government to make sure that women are actually facilitated and engaged to the point whereby right now Rwanda is the country in Africa which has got the largest number of women in political and public offices. I don't think we have that in this country of ours called Kenya. And as a member of parliament, I can tell you that house is just, and I'm not trying to say this to discourage all of you, that house is a talk shop. The issues about whether we are increasing our salaries, it's true. That's all we ever agree about. Critical issues about whether national resources are to be protected, whether we need to bring laws and rules and bring bills in parliament which are going to protect children, the marginalized, the vulnerable, the women, and make sure that we bring good governance in Kenya, including the issue you've been discussing of inclusivity, is never at the top of the line. And somebody raised an issue saying, I think for me, we may need to go back and start asking ourselves, why have we become this man-eat-man society? Because everything we are doing in this country, we are more looking at ourselves inwards. We are moving to our tribal bases and making sure that even when somebody who obviously happens to be a member of parliament like me, if I've stolen and I'm arrested, then my community must get up and start screaming how they're finishing us. Because we didn't steal. I mean, and anyway, even if we stole, that is what everybody else is doing. So I am pleading with all of you that I think this matter we now need to start looking at in maybe a different way and in a much more complex way. We are a bit too simplistic about looking at the problems that our country has got. And it is true, you told my party leader here, the problem is for Kenya we are only about 12 members of parliament. I can assure you, I don't think that if Jubilee really wanted to pass that bill, under the gender bill, that the guys would refuse not to vote for it. I don't think so. I don't think if for the ODM team, if they had been talked to by the party leadership and told them pass this thing, it would have passed. I mean, we would not have passed it. So yes, we are busy pontificating and talking out here and issuing press conferences and going into funerals and saying we want to make sure that equality and fairness and justice exist in our country, but the reality is that we actually don't mean what we say. So try and figure out. Thank you very much.
This is the point of which I wanted to say to Mheshimiwa, point of order, but I held my horse. Mheshimiwa, I hear you, and it's really great that we are the leaders that, you know, the people chose, but it is the parliamentarians who voted not to have a minimum standard for education. So even as people choose whoever presents themselves, if we had legislated to make sure that we needed a degree at least, then they would have had, so we still bear the biggest responsibility with regards to the people you are describing.
All right, thank you very much. And I'm told I'm out of time, but as the MC said earlier, there's a session for speed dating.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ken Mijungu.
Yes, so you will definitely have an opportunity to interact with your leaders.
Yeah.
But as culture demands, you know, if I go home, my mom will punish me. My big brother is here, former chairman, National Youth Council, Bill Mijungu. So if I didn't recognize him, my mom will punish me. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you.
Thank you very much. As we are moving out, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading to the amphitheater. Kule amphitheater inaitwa hot seat. The Senator Wetangula is going to be on the hot seat. The young people, everybody, tuelekee sote kwenye amphitheater. Kule ndio mambo, we're going to take everything else to the amphitheater as we continue. Sasa, tupataneni kule kwa amphitheater tafadhali. There's more action, there's more entertainment, there's more discussion directly with Senator Wetangula and these other leaders. So, asanteni sana. Tupatane kule amphitheater tafadhali.